Hello all, and welcome to part 3 of the Coordinated Entry System training. This training is the third of 3 coordinated entry trainings designed to help housing provider staff, outreach workers, and other community stakeholders better understand the CES. Part 3 will address more complex coordinated entry policies and procedures, as well as give refresher training for all existing staff on new updates to the CES and the CE manual. The topics covered within this training will include rehousing situations, evictions, documentation criteria, domestic violence protocols, and updates to the CE manual. Rehousing is the process of moving a client from one housing program to another based on certain situations that may arise when in housing. Clients can be rehoused up to 3 times before needing to be exited and re-entered into coordinated entry. Prioritization of rehoused clients is based on the following criteria. Clients who are fleeing domestic violence or need a more appropriate housing setting, such as more intensive services, are moved to the top of the by name list. Rehousing for a desire to move or because of non-violations of a lease do not automatically mean a client will be placed at the top. Rehouses that are not automatically placed at the top should be prioritized on the list based on the same factors as others in the CE, such as by vulnerability score, vulnerability, and length of time homeless. When rehousing clients, there are some situations that may arise that do not allow for a priority or immediate rehouse situations. Factors that determine ineligibility for immediate rehouse include evictions due to non-payment of rent, evictions due to lease violations, evictions due to abandonment or hospitalization or incarceration of longer than 90 days, evictions due to criminal activity if convicted or conducted on the property, and evictions due to violence. It is important to note that these evictions or lease violations do not automatically mean a client must be rehoused, nor do they automatically mean a client cannot re-enter coordinated entry. Programs are encouraged to put policies in place to work with clients to prevent evictions or lease violations, and are encouraged to work with clients even after a violation has happened to try to prevent additional or more serious violations from occurring. The only reason an individual may be forced to leave PSH is for a lease violation due to behavioral issues, violence, criminal activity, abandonment, or failure to pay rent. If evicted, the individual is eligible for potential rehousing in another participating PSH program or the same program as many times as the program is willing to accommodate. Individuals can be reassigned as many as 3 times in separate programs before they must be exited and restart the coordinated entry process, with consideration for what additional resources or services may be needed to help the client succeed. Every effort should be made by case managers, housing providers, and property owners to prevent a client from being evicted due to lease violations. Potential eviction situations should also be addressed at by name list meetings in an effort to work to prevent the eviction or so a plan can be put in place to put the client back on the by name list if needed. Permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing program participants must have proper documentation before entering into a program. PSH clients must have a verification of homelessness, or a VOH, and a verification of disability, or a VOD, while rapid rehousing clients must have a VOH that shows literal homelessness immediately prior to entering the program. Documentation must be included in the case file and uploaded into the client profile in HMIS. If any CES staff do not have HMIS access, documentation must be sent to the CE lead agency staff so it can be uploaded to a client's profile. The following outlines how verifications of homelessness can be submitted for programs. It is important to note that these verifications of homelessness are outlined in the priority by which HUD prefers to have them submitted. Third-party verification in the form of an HMIS printout or written referral/certification by another housing or service provider, or a written letter of observation with specific dates by an outreach worker, service provider, licensed professional, law enforcement agency or organization, a business owner, relatives do not count, who has actually physically witnessed the client sleeping in a place not meant for human habitation, or a letter of verification written by an applicable emergency shelter, or self-certification by the individual or head of household seeking assistance, stating that they were living on the street. While clients generally can only have 3 months of homelessness self-certified, programs are allowed to have up to 25% of clients in a program self-certify the entire 12 months of homelessness needed to verify chronic homelessness for PSH programs. It is important to note that due diligence must be documented by caseworkers to ensure that every attempt to obtain third-party documentation was made. Chronic VOHs must total 12 months in literal homelessness. Documentation can be 12 months consecutively or can include 4 separate instances over the last 3 years, totaling 12 months. It should be noted that the final rule clarifies that a single encounter in a month is sufficient documentation to consider the individual or head of household as residing in that location for the entire month, unless there is clear evidence of a break of more than 7 nights. Chronic VOD documentation can be submitted in the following ways. A HUD form called a disability verification signed by a licensed medical professional or physician, or a current copy of the individual's check stub or statement showing Social Security records currently receiving SSI or SSDI benefits. Clients fleeing domestic violence are able to access the COC and housing programs or services available through the COC. However, DV clients must have additional measures implemented to ensure their safety and confidentiality are of the utmost priority. Some clients may disclose they are fleeing domestic violence, but want to pursue the traditional track of CES, which means they will have a regular CES intake process done and will sign a confidentiality agreement, stating that they are okay with their information being entered into HMIS. The following protocol relates to persons fleeing domestic violence who have not consented to having their information shared and are in need of additional safety and confidentiality considerations. CES staff should offer clients fleeing domestic violence referrals to victim service providers, or VSPs, who are trained in safety planning. Some survivors may disclose they are fleeing DV and will not want to access DV or VSP services, and some survivors will. It is important for CES staff to inform clients of all resources and services that are available to them, and then let the client choose what resources are best for them. A key aspect of integrating DV procedures into the CES is survivor-driven decision-making. This can also be applicable for clients who are fleeing domestic violence and who are pursuing the traditional CES track. It is important to still offer as many resources and information for clients as needed. However, there is no pressure to force a client to access a service if they do not want to. Clients may have a VI SPDAT assessment done, but no identifying information should be entered into HMIS. All individual victims of domestic violence will be assessed via the SPDAT assessments only if an assessment is desired by the individual. This will require the service provider to explain the SPDAT, its purpose, and how it is used once completed. The assessments completed are only to gather vulnerability of the client. Clients can be eligible for DV-specific housing resources in the COC and the community, as well as non-DV-specific housing. Clients fleeing DV often need varying levels of support, and it is important to allow survivors to know what options they have available to them, both inside and out of the DV-VSP community. Clients fleeing DV can provide oral proof of homelessness. Third-party documentation is not needed for clients fleeing DV, since attempting to obtain this information may put the client in more danger and compromise their confidentiality. The formal DV referral process is currently being developed within the COC and with VSP staff, but CES staff should refer clients who want DV services to DV and VSP providers in the community. The referral process and services should be survivor-driven and trauma-informed. Safety and confidentiality should be a main focus of any referral. CES program and staff should have on-hand resources for emergency DV shelters and programs that clients may access, as well as procedures for how to connect a client with an agency in a safe and confidential way. CES staff must not share any personally identifiable information when navigating the referral process. DV clients listed on the by name list for a potential COC housing opening must be de-identified with a placeholder that does not include any personally identifying information. DV and VSPs within the COC that receive COC funding must utilize a comparable database for clients in their programs and referrals that collect aggregate data and does not have identifiable client data within the database. The CES manual is updated on an annual basis based on input from HUD regulations and community input and need. CES staff are responsible for reviewing all updates to the CE manual. The most notable CE manual updates for 2019 for direct CES staff to know include VI SPDAT assessments do not have a time limit for expiration. Assessments should only be redone if the client has had a significant life change or if they were previously housed through the COC and then re-entered a PSH or COC funded program. Prioritization guidelines for housing programs was updated based on HUD regulations. The eviction policy was updated to more thoroughly outline what situations result in an eviction, as well as guidance on how to prevent evictions. There were multiple CES tools that were added to the appendix of the CE manual. These include a case conferencing tool, termination of program client form, and a CE advertisement form. These documents can be found in the appendix of the CE manual and must be utilized by CES staff for case conferencing, documenting if a new VI is needed, terminating a client, and advertising for CES within the community. With that, thank you for completing part 3 of the Coordinated Entry training. Additional information on other specific policies and procedures within Coordinated Entry can be found by accessing the Coordinated Entry manual on the CAFT website, along with other Coordinated Entry resources. If there are still questions or concerns after referring to the manual and this webpage, please feel free to reach out to the CE lead agency staff at coordinatedentry@caf.org.